here we are in what I describe as the Gallery of Revelation in the Demas Nwoko Design Galleries of the Onobrak Arts Centre. I call it that way because this gallery, or this section of the gallery, showcases very powerful works by Bruce Onobrakpeya, dramatizing the unique aesthetic and spiritual force of classical Urhobo and African spiritualities, and moves on to project a very rich understanding of Christian spirituality, all demonstrated in the art of Bruce Onobrakpeya, and goes on from there to present artifacts, works of art from different forms of classical African spirituality made by different ancient artists. Now we begin with a magnificent constellation of pillars, as well as a divining tree. And this is known as Agbarha Otor, if I'm pronouncing it well. And from what I can read here, that the art pieces were created through experiments over a period of 2 decades, that is 20 years. And these pillars represent an aspect of Urhobo spiritual art, in which pillars suggest reaching up towards Ogene, the creator of the universe. You will observe the level of intricacy of detail on each of these pillars, which will require careful study for adequate appreciation. And harmonizing with these pillars are various smaller aspects of the work, such as the magnificent Ibiebe script of Onobrakpeya, derived from Urhobo, but demonstrating its own unique correlation between meaning and sight. You will see on the wall chaplets looking like amulets, as well as different structures suggesting something mysterious and uncanny. Then right here on the right is another manifestation of Onobrakpeya's mastery of the relationship between script and the figures. Looking again at his Ibiebe script at the top, and then evocations of raffia at the bottom, suggesting the dividing screens used in classical African shrine culture to divide sacred from profane space. Just magnificent. And beyond that, we again see his mysterious, in fact, I don't know how to describe them, but different palettes demonstrating different aspects of existence, in which whatever meanings they are projecting are difficult to understand, but they are compelling at the same time. Then on the left here, there is a magnificent constellation of different kinds of images, the meanings of which are not always easy to understand, but the artistic forms of which are most glorious in projection. In this instance, we see a group of men and a group of women surrounded by various forms of different kinds. What are they projecting? Are they projecting the unity of humanity, unity of masculine and the feminine? And on this place is one of Onobrakpeya's most striking works, his resurrection. Resurrection in what sense? Resurrection of Christ. And his own Christ is most uniquely projected. Here are the feet at the bottom. That is the torso at the top. Is it a human form or is it a spacecraft? And around it are various constellations representing plants, human formations, all projecting, as Onobrakpeya himself has described, what he calls a church, but a church visualized in terms of the rising of Jesus Christ from a congregation of believers, and then the constellation of humanity and of nature. Here are other works within this same wonderful space, where powerful, I think he calls them plastographs, I'm not sure, depicting different scenes from different works, which it will take a lot of time to fully take time to study, to analyze. And right here is one of the more fascinating ones, depicting different versions of Onobrakpeya's visualization of Mami water, the female spirit believed to dwell under the waters in various African cultures and even in Western cultures. Here, I expect, is the Mami Water figure herself, rising in aerodynamic majesty. And in this place is her kingdom, showing different forms, surreal, fantastic, where she supposedly dwells. And in this place, we again see a majestic queen-like figure rising up, as if suggesting a kind of kingly majesty. And then again, a place suggesting some kind of surreal, fantastic, non-human, but most beautiful landscape of houses. Moving from this point, we observe this. In fact, you will need, I won't pretend that I actually understand all the various techniques used in creating these works. Look, for example, at this one. The thing is solid. There's a kind of metallic solidity to it, but it's a kind of relief in 2 dimensions. What do they project? What do they imply? 3 human beings, 2 human beings, and in this case, a very strange form. Is it human? Is it semi-human? What does it imply? Why is there something like a human being on top and at the face, something like a bottom, something like a face, but a non-human face? What is it projecting? Is it something to do with the beginning of the universe, the end of the world, or something more fantastic? Here is another one of those strange ones. You can't see it very clearly, but it's another striking piece of which meaning is submerged behind an experimental treatment of form, which it will take time to fully grasp. And here is one of the more fascinating aspects of these galleries. You find here this collection of wizened trees, of wizened tree stumps, which, according to Onobrakpeya, was simply placed there to find space, for the name of space, but which resonates very powerfully in terms of color, in terms of dynamism of form, with the various structures one finds on the walls. Possibly examples of Onobrakpeya's kind of plastograph, I'm not sure, but you will find here that this is a form of what we may call relief, in which 2-dimensional forms are bulging from a surface, as if seeming to come out. What are these? Are these staffs, indicating forms of power, forms of office? The same as these ones. These images recall in different Onobrakpeya works. These are images of pain, of grief, of power, of lament, as well as of triumph. Again, each of them is richly detailed and will need to be carefully studied for adequate appreciation of its aesthetic force and its possible meaning. Moving on, we observe more of this exquisite use of this sense of 2-dimensionality, in which 2-dimensional shapes have been very carefully ground, been very carefully shaped on something like a canvas, and they stand out with force like sculptures. What are they saying? What are they doing? What could they be implying? What do these wavy forms, looking like a serpent, suggest? It's difficult to understand. According to Onobrakpeya, a work of art cannot be fully understood. It can only be experienced. And with time, you assimilate it within yourself, and then you generate possibilities of response. Possibilities which are ultimately infinite as they continue to unfold over time to different kinds of people. This one is an absolutely majestic piece. It is majestic in the sense of grandeur, in the sense of human and non-human presence. Look at these pillars, for example. Look at the forms at the center, evoking a cow, evoking other structures of which there is no correlation in the world as we know it, but here powerfully realized, vividly configured in such a way that you really have no choice but to salute the ingenuity of a master who could have created this work. If an artist creates a work like this, only one of these in a lifetime, he will have done something great. But Onobrakpeya is known to have created works of this caliber over and over again across decades of experimentation. Moving on, we now come into the Christian aspect of his work. We have moved from the sections dealing with more African Urhobo, Edo spiritualities, and are now witnessing the Christian dimension of his art. And here, we have one of his most powerful depictions of Christian art. Jesus Christ and the disciples at the Last Supper. Jesus, as you see here, looks like a wise, mature African. His disciples look African. And around him is a wealth of detail, a wealth of life, which is Onobrakpeya's signature technique, in which whatever he's doing, the entire landscape and the forms, even the foreground, are written with life, a sense of dynamism moving through the entire space, evoking the African idea that the entire universe is suffused with cosmic energy in which all beings can partake. I also like this particularly striking one, which suggests to me the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus Christ made a famous speech that blessed about those who are blessed for being the peacemakers, among others. You see the hand, figure's hand is raised, and different people, women, children, cattle headers, etc. In other words, he has transposed an Africa, the Christian story in terms of an African landscape and African people. Magnificently done. And also here there is a bishop preaching to different kinds of people, but all African. Fantastic harmony of colors, white, red, and others. And here, another magnificent piece, which I will not pretend I can interpret, but which I can see at the top. I can see Jesus Christ on the cross. I can see on his left, I can see the crescent of Islam, the cross of Christianity in the center. Of course, evoking the unity of the Abrahamic religions of Christianity and Islam. And looking further down, could the master, the artist is able to unify various spiritualities, be trying to suggest something of the unity of the Abrahamic traditions and the African traditions? I can see a cross here in this place. Then what does this imply? Who is this figure looking like a strange kind of angel? Who are these figures looking like deities, looking like powerful forces, or even looking like a Ogboni, the sacred forms of the Ogboni esoteric order, sacred society, one of the forms Onobrakpeya has used so powerfully. So may this beautiful panel, in which two-dimensionality seems to achieve three dimensions on account of its projection from the surface, suggests the unity of spiritualities, the triple dimension that shapes the African, Christianity, Islam, and African traditions. Whatever it may suggest, one may spend a lifetime meditating on these works and constantly drinking meaning and experience from them. Now let us move on from Onobrakpeya's engagement with a Christian example and look at these magnificent cases in which there are very powerful examples, very powerful forms of traditional or classical African spiritual art, beginning from this beautiful piece from Yoruba land, which I understand is Ile Inu or Ile Ori, indicating the casing made of cowries, which is to be a form of money, a casing representing the spiritual center of the human being. Then this looks like a gelede. It looks to me like a gelede masking form. Gelede being a form of performance used in honoring spiritually powerful women in Yoruba culture. And here is a war vest loaded with charms, loaded with little objects of spiritual power, in which in ancient times warriors war to war in the understanding that the spiritual force of the various amulets around the vest will protect them from harm. A magnificent piece, radiating a form of ancient power. I particularly am also struck by this arrangement in which I think these are direct cloth. This is a form of Yoruba carving of his tool. Those are staffs. It gives a sense of the ancient and the venerable. And over there, these I expect are non-Nigerian forms of art. And this is what is called the Mande Kora. The Kora meaning a form of stringed instrument, which is played possibly in Senegal, I'm not sure. And then here, we find again another of those vests, war vests, along with other myriad forms of different kinds of many little striking forms from these ancient arts. Then here we find a chair. And on this chair is non-Nigerian, certainly, on account of this magnificent creature here. I've seen this mark somewhere. It's a particular symbol, a particular art of a particular ethnic group somewhere in Africa. Then this is Chiwara of the Bambara, a magnificent form of aerodynamic creativity in which there is a tension between the motion of an antelope and the sense of stillness created by the artistic form. It represents the creativity of nature. And here we find Ogboni Edon. The Edon is the principal symbol of Ogboni esoteric order dedicated to Ile, the worship of the earth. And the Edon are among Onobrakpeya's signature artifact, signature forms, which he has employed in different creativities, particularly in his Oracle series, in projecting a sense of the arcane, the unusual, and the numinous. This, I think, is an Ogboni staff. All these others, from my understanding, are Ogboni figurines, including an image of Ile, the earth as the great mother. And you find, along with Ogboni works, all these being Ogboni works, you now find works from Benin, the famous Benin bronzes. So there's a sense of majesty and power. That is Benin. Then, moving on, there is a particular set of works at this end, which I find most fascinating, which the curator of this place, Sunday Masago, has explained to me before now. I will not pretend to recall the entire explanation, but what I recall him to be saying is something about the correlation between modernity and new and ancientness. And we find here, in fact, wonderful constellations of works in which Onobrakpeya brings together different forms of African cultural tradition, such as this magnificent piece, for example, this magnificent piece most likely from Benin, and this piece partly from Edon, from Ogboni, bringing them all together with electronic circuits to conjure something unique, something unusual, something projecting that same sense of a shrine, which Onobrakpeya is unique in generating. These are others along the same lines, in which electronic circuit boards and various other forms cohere. These are among my favorite works here. These two are from Benin. This is Benin. Then moving on, what another beautiful achievement of this gallery, of which we are witnessing just a small aspect, are the effort to present images from the remarkable book Where Gods and Mortals Meet, edited by Perkins Foss, in which various figures, various aspects of Urhobo spirituality are presented. I will summarize this journey I've put through this gallery now to return another day with just looking at this striking work by Onobrakpeya. Beautiful reds, blues, various colors. What is it titled as? Ada Eribi, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Road to the Spirit World, in which is described as Eribi is the abode of the dead, on the underworld of those who have departed from the land of the living. Ada Erivi means the crossroad between the land of the living and the dead. The picture shows a man lying down at the edge of the forest, where a trackless road, invisible to living people, is supposed to lead to the spirit world. He pretends to be dead in a bid to collect necessary travel information. I sum up this our journey here in terms of this journey, this bold person who, pretending to be dead in order to understand how to journey to the abode, how to journey to the beyond. In a similar sense, this gallery enables one to transport one's mind to various realms at the point of intersection between spirit and matter, between the human and the divine, as visualized through Onobrakpeya's work in its engagement with Urhobo, Delta, Edo, Yoruba spiritualities, distilling them, transmuting them in terms of his inimitable creativity. Thank you.